There are times when a person does not suddenly discover the truth. Instead, the truth begins appearing in small moments. A thought returns when they least expect it. A memory becomes more meaningful than it used to be. A familiar feeling rises again, even after they believed they had finally moved beyond it. Your soulmate may be entering that kind of season now. Something about your connection may be making sense to them in a completely different way, not because someone convinced them, not because circumstances forced them to think about you, but because time has given them enough distance to see what they could not see clearly before. Sometimes when we are inside an emotional situation, we only notice what is happening on the surface. We notice disagreements. We notice silence. We notice the moments when things did not happen according to our expectations. We notice what was missing. But later, when the emotions become quieter, we begin noticing something else. We begin noticing what was present. Your soulmate may be remembering the way your presence affected them. Perhaps they did not fully understand it at the time. Maybe being around you made them think differently. Maybe certain conversations stayed in their mind long after they ended. Maybe you brought out feelings they were not prepared to acknowledge. And because they did not understand those feelings, they may have tried to create a simple explanation. They may have told themselves that the connection was only temporary. They may have convinced themselves that circumstances were responsible for everything. They may have believed that distance would eventually erase the importance of what happened. But time does not always erase meaningful experiences. Sometimes time reveals them, and that may be happening now. Your soulmate could be looking back at the past without the same emotional resistance they once carried. They may be asking questions they avoided before. Why did this person affect me so deeply? Why did certain moments remain in my memory? Why did I feel understood in ways I could not explain? Why did I become uncomfortable when things became emotionally real? Why did I pull away when part of me wanted to stay connected? These questions may not have easy answers, but asking them is already a change, because there is a difference between remembering someone and understanding why you remember them. Your soulmate may be moving from the first stage into the second. For a long time, they may have focused on what went wrong. Now they may be beginning to understand what the experience taught them. And that realization can be powerful. Sometimes a person enters our life and exposes parts of us that we had successfully ignored. They may reveal our fears, our habits, our emotional walls, our tendency to run when something becomes important. Your connection may have done something similar for your soulmate. It may have shown them a side of themselves they were not ready to meet. Perhaps they discovered that they were not as emotionally independent as they believed. Perhaps they realized they had been protecting themselves so carefully that they had also been preventing themselves from experiencing genuine closeness. And when they think about you now, they may not only be thinking about you, they may be thinking about who they were when you were part of their life. That is an important distinction, because sometimes we miss a person, and sometimes we miss the version of ourselves that existed around that person. Your soulmate may be remembering moments when they felt more open, more honest, more vulnerable, more connected to their own emotions. And perhaps that is why your memory has not disappeared as easily as they expected. They may have continued with everyday life. They may have stayed busy. They may have focused on work, responsibilities, family, friends, goals, or personal plans. From the outside, everything may appear normal, but inside, certain memories can remain quietly active. A person can continue living while still carrying an unanswered question, and your soulmate may have one. They may be wondering whether they misunderstood the connection, whether they reacted too quickly, whether fear influenced decisions that they believed were logical, whether they allowed temporary circumstances to determine something that deserved more patience. These realizations rarely arrive all at once. They usually develop gradually. One memory leads to another. One realization creates another question. One quiet evening gives them enough space to hear thoughts they normally keep buried beneath daily noise. And eventually, they may reach a point where avoiding the truth becomes harder than facing it. That does not necessarily mean they already know what they will do. It does not mean everything is suddenly solved. It simply means their understanding may be changing. And that matters, because genuine change often begins internally before it becomes visible externally. Before a person sends a message, they may first admit to themselves that they still care. Before they approach someone, they may first accept that their previous explanation was incomplete. Before they make a different choice, they may first understand why they made the old one. Your soulmate may currently be somewhere in that internal process. They may be recognizing that the connection was not simply about the circumstances surrounding it. It was also about what it awakened within them. Perhaps you challenged them without trying. Perhaps your honesty made them uncomfortable because it touched something they had avoided. Perhaps your presence showed them that emotional closeness requires more courage than they expected. And maybe they did not appreciate that lesson immediately. Some lessons become valuable only after we have lived without them for a while. Your soulmate may now be realizing that. They may also be recognizing something else. Not every meaningful connection is easy. Some connections become meaningful precisely because they force us to grow. They may bring uncertainty. They may reveal weaknesses. They may challenge old beliefs. But that does not automatically make them meaningless. Your soulmate may be learning to separate difficulty from lack of value. That distinction could be changing how they view your entire story. Maybe they once thought, if this were meant to be important, it would have been easier. Now they may be questioning that belief. They may understand that timing, maturity, communication, and personal growth can affect how people respond to something meaningful. Two people can care and still struggle to express it properly. Two people can feel connected and still become confused. Two people can matter to each other and still need time to understand themselves. Your soulmate may be beginning to see that complexity differently. And perhaps the most important realization is this. They may finally understand that what happened between you changed them, even if they never expected it. Even if they tried to move forward, even if they told themselves that the chapter was finished, something from that connection may have remained. A lesson, a memory, a new awareness, a question, or simply the realization that they are capable of feeling more deeply than they once believed. That realization can change a person. It can make them reconsider old choices. It can make them become more honest with themselves. And it can prepare them for a future they could not have understood before. So if things appear quiet right now, do not automatically assume that nothing is happening. Sometimes silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence is where understanding begins. Your soulmate may be experiencing a private shift that nobody else can see. They may be becoming less defensive, less certain about the story they once told themselves, more willing to acknowledge what they actually felt. And as that happens, the meaning of your connection may become clearer to them. Not because the past is being rewritten, but because they are finally mature enough to read it differently. And that may be the beginning of something much deeper, not necessarily an immediate return, not necessarily a dramatic moment, but an internal awakening, a quiet realization that some people enter our lives and leave behind something that cannot simply be dismissed. Your soulmate may finally be understanding that your connection was one of those experiences. And the more honestly they look at it, the more questions they may begin asking about what comes next. What comes next may not begin with a message. It may begin with a change in perspective. Your soulmate may be learning that not every answer has to arrive immediately. For perhaps the first time, they may be allowing themselves to sit with uncertainty instead of running from it. That is significant because uncertainty used to make them uncomfortable. They may have wanted everything defined. They wanted to know where they stood. They wanted to understand what would happen before allowing themselves to become emotionally invested. And when they could not predict the outcome, they may have chosen distance. But now something inside them may be changing. They may be realizing that trying to control every emotional outcome only created more confusion. Sometimes you cannot understand the meaning of a connection by standing outside of it and analyzing every detail. Sometimes you understand it by becoming honest about what you felt. Your soulmate may be reaching that point of honesty. They may be admitting that they cared more than they allowed themselves to show. They may be admitting that certain things hurt because they mattered, They may be admitting that their silence was not always a sign of indifference. Sometimes silence is simply what happens when someone does not know how to communicate what is happening inside them. That does not make every choice correct. It does not erase moments when communication was needed, but it can explain why a person behaves differently from what they actually feel. Your soulmate may now be looking at those moments with greater self-awareness. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they may be asking, "What was happening inside me when I made those choices?" That is a much deeper question, and it can lead to real growth. They may recognize that fear influenced them. Perhaps they feared disappointment. Perhaps they feared losing control. Perhaps they feared becoming dependent on someone emotionally. Perhaps they were afraid that if they admitted how important the connection had become, they would have to make decisions they were not ready to make. Whatever the reason, they may now understand that avoiding a feeling does not make the feeling disappear. It only postpones the moment when it must be understood. And your soulmate may no longer want to postpone that moment. There may also be something they are beginning to understand about you. They may realize that you were not asking them to be perfect. You may simply have wanted honesty. You may have wanted clarity. You may have wanted to know that what you experienced was not something you imagined alone. Perhaps they misunderstood your needs before. Maybe they thought emotional closeness meant pressure. Maybe they interpreted your questions as demands. Maybe they believed that creating distance would make everything simpler. With time, they may now see those situations differently. They may recognize that what you wanted was not perfection, it was authenticity. And that realization can make old memories feel different. A conversation that once seemed uncomfortable may now appear meaningful. A disagreement that once felt like a problem may now reveal something both people were trying to communicate. A period of silence that once felt final may now look like a chapter where both sides were struggling with emotions they did not know how to handle. This does not mean the past should be romanticized. It means it can be understood with greater wisdom. Your soulmate may also be learning that moving forward does not require pretending the past never mattered. You can grow beyond an experience while still appreciating what it taught you. You can become stronger without becoming colder. You can accept what happened without allowing it to control your future. That may be one of their biggest lessons. They may be learning how to carry the memory of your connection without being trapped by it. And strangely enough, that healthier perspective may make them more capable of approaching the situation honestly. Because when a person stops trying to force an outcome, they can finally see what they genuinely want. Your soulmate may be discovering that now. They may be asking themselves what they would say if they were given another opportunity to communicate. Not what sounds impressive, not what protects their pride, not what makes them appear unaffected, but what is actually true. Perhaps they would say that they misunderstood something. Perhaps they would admit that they were scared. Perhaps they would acknowledge that they did not know how to handle the depth of the connection. Or perhaps they simply want you to know that your presence mattered. Whatever form that realization takes, it is coming from a more honest place. And that is important, because a meaningful connection cannot be sustained by assumptions. It needs communication. It needs respect. It needs emotional maturity. It needs two people willing to see reality instead of only seeing what they hope reality will be. Your soulmate may be developing that maturity. They may also be becoming more aware of their own patterns. Maybe they have repeated the same behavior in other areas of life. When things become difficult, they withdraw. When emotions become intense, they become distant. When someone gets close, they search for reasons to protect themselves. Your connection may have been one of the experiences that exposed this pattern. Now they may be seeing it more clearly. And once a person recognizes a pattern, they have the opportunity to change it. That change may not happen overnight, but awareness is often the first step. They may begin choosing conversations over assumptions, patience over impulsive decisions, honesty over appearances, understanding over defensiveness. And perhaps that is what your connection ultimately awakened in them. Not simply a desire for another person, but a desire to become a better version of themselves. That may be why the memory continues to have significance. You may represent a chapter in which they learned something about emotional courage. They may remember how difficult it was to be vulnerable. They may remember how uncomfortable honesty felt. But they may also remember how genuine those moments were. And genuine moments tend to leave an impression. As their perspective changes, they may also stop blaming circumstances for everything. Timing may have played a role. Distance may have played a role. Life responsibilities may have played a role. But they may realize that personal choices mattered too. That realization can be uncomfortable. Yet it can also be freeing. Because once a person accepts responsibility for their choices, they are no longer powerless over their future. They can choose differently. They can communicate differently. They can respond differently. They can become more intentional. Your soulmate may be entering that stage now. And if they eventually reach out, the healthiest version of that communication will not come from desperation. It will come from clarity. It will not be about proving something. It will be about understanding something. It will not need dramatic promises. It may simply begin with an honest conversation. And that is why you do not need to force anything from your side. Let their realization belong to them. Let your own growth belong to you. You do not need to spend every moment trying to predict what another person is thinking. You do not need to search for hidden meanings in every silence. Your life deserves attention too. Continue becoming the person you want to become. Continue learning. Continue building your confidence through real experiences. Continue surrounding yourself with people who respect you. Because regardless of what your soulmate eventually chooses, your growth remains valuable. Perhaps the deepest lesson of this entire connection is not about waiting for another person. Perhaps it is about learning that love, connection, and personal growth do not have to compete with one another. You can care about someone and still have boundaries. You can remember someone and still move forward. You can hope for understanding without putting your entire life on hold. A message can be sent in a moment. A decision can be made quickly. But genuine emotional growth takes time. If they are truly changing, that change will eventually become visible through their choices, not simply their words. And perhaps that is what life is preparing both of you to understand. Some connections are not meant to be measured by how quickly they produce an outcome. Sometimes their value is revealed through what they teach. Sometimes a person enters your story and changes the way you understand trust. Sometimes they challenge your expectations. Sometimes they expose wounds that need attention. And sometimes they simply show you that your heart is capable of feeling something you never expected. Your soulmate may now be recognizing their own lesson. They may understand that your connection was not meaningless just because it became complicated. They may understand that distance did not automatically erase its significance, and they may understand that the past deserves neither denial nor obsession. It deserves honesty. Whatever happens next, let that honesty guide the future. If paths cross again, let the connection be built on clearer communication and greater maturity. If circumstances remain separate, let the lessons remain. Either way, something meaningful can still come from what you experienced. Your soulmate may be realizing that now, and perhaps the most beautiful part is that they do not need to have every answer today. They only need to stop running from the questions, because once a person becomes willing to face what they truly feel, they begin creating space for a different kind of future. A future based less on fear, less on assumptions, less on trying to control everything, and more on truth. That may be the quiet transformation happening within them. And while they are discovering their truth, you can discover yours. You can ask yourself what this connection taught you, what boundaries became important, what kind of communication you deserve, what kind of person you want to become, and what kind of relationship would genuinely bring peace into your life. Perhaps that is where the story becomes bigger than the two of you. Because sometimes the purpose of a powerful connection is not simply to bring two people together. Sometimes it is to help both people grow into individuals who are finally capable of understanding what they once could not. Your soulmate may be beginning that journey, and you may be on yours. So let the past remain a teacher, not a prison. Let the unanswered questions become opportunities for wisdom. Let time reveal what cannot be forced. And if your paths are meant to cross again, let that meeting happen from a place of greater understanding. Not because either person is incomplete without the other, but because two people who have grown can meet with clearer eyes than they had before. For now, there may be no dramatic announcement, no obvious sign, no immediate answer, just a quiet shift taking place beneath the surface. Your soulmate may finally be understanding what they once could not. And sometimes that is how the biggest changes begin. Not with noise, not with certainty, but with one honest thought. Maybe I never understood this connection the way I thought I did. And from that thought, everything can begin to look different.